So I was a lawyer. I went to Harvard Law School. I actually went to school with Hill Harper, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
And I directed him in the Colored Museum in
Oh,
law
wow.
school. But anyway, I I graduated. I was practicing in Boston, and I was at a law firm. And my first year, we lost half the firm to another firm. And I stayed with the remaining group because they were trying to find someone else to merge with. And there was a woman who would have, if we had stayed open, would have been up for partner. And I found out she was a musician, and I was, doing some acting stuff on the side. And so she asked me one day, "What is it you like about law?" And when I told her, she said, "You like acting in a courtroom. Go act. You're not married. You don't have a mortgage. You don't have kids. Do it now because you don't want to wake up one day and go, 'What if?' And you can't." And, I thought about it, I prayed about it, and I realized it had never dawned on me that way. But when she said it that way, I'm like, oh, I'm doing the safe version of what I really want to do.
Mm.
So I then, Boston at the time was a great place to get my SAG card. So I ended up getting my SAG card in Boston, and I was licensed in New York and Massachusetts. So then I moved to New York. I had the privilege of doing Gloria Naylor had turned Bailey's Cafe into a play. So my first equity show, maybe, I don't know, 5 months after I got to New York, was Bailey's Cafe at Hartford Stage in Connecticut.
Wow.
So, and I just really, it just sort of, it rolled from there. It's taken a while. I've been churning along with this for a long time.
Hey, this is Mike, and you're watching the Reelblack podcast. And today we've got a very special guest for you, an actress that you may know, you may not know. We're going to learn more about Inger Tudor, who is the star who plays Rose McClendon in the new movie Voodoo Macbeth, which is in theaters everywhere, October 21st.
Orson Welles, meet Rose McClendon. We're mounting a Scottish play
in Harlem for Negro theater.
We want you to direct.
The play is set in 19th century Haiti with voodoo.
Voodoo?
Voodoo.
If I'm going to direct, it needs to be something that will put me on the map.
It's the Negro theater unit. Your white boy better get that straight.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are.
It's still morning here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. So you're a fresh face to me, but a welcome one. Tell us about Voodoo Macbeth.
Well, Voodoo Macbeth was, or I should say is, it's a special project out of USC grad school. They have a class and where they try to reconstruct the idea of writers being in a writing room and writing in collaboration, except instead of doing it for TV, they do it for a film. So there were 8 writers on the project, and the idea is to create a cohesive script with one voice. And in 2018, 2019, they decided to do the story of this all Black play in Harlem in 1936, which became nicknamed Voodoo Macbeth. Rose McClendon, who was a Broadway diva at the time, wanted to do an all Black production of Macbeth. She was working with John Houseman, who, some people remember as a producer and the actor in The Paper Chase. But they decided to hire 20-year-old Orson Welles, who had never directed professionally before. And so this was his first production. And for many years, he actually said that Voodoo Macbeth was his most successful production. And it's called Voodoo Macbeth because he decided, since it was an all Black cast, to set it in Haiti. So instead of witches, it's voodoo priestesses.
Very well put. Yeah, there's people. I was really excited when I found out about this movie because we have it's a Works Progress Administration film. I'm sure you're familiar with it, where it's like the only extant footage from Voodoo Macbeth.
It's at the end of our movie.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's on the channel as well. On
Oh,
Reelblack,
wow.
on Reelblack channel. Yeah. So
Okay.
we've had requests from time to time, like, where can I see the whole thing? And I'm like, you can't.
Can't.
Film was expensive back then. So this brings legitimacy to the to people's inquiries, I suppose,
Yes.
because we get to see a little bit more in this movie, in the recreation of it. Tell us about Rose and what attracted you to the role of Rose McClendon.
Well, I have to say, and I'm actually a little embarrassed to say this, except that I think I'm in the same boat as many people.
Mm,
I had the privilege of being able to do a table read of one of the early drafts. And so I come to do the table read, and I'm reading this and thinking, how have I lived? I lived in New York for 9 years doing theater. I'd never heard of Rose McClendon. And I couldn't believe that I had never heard of this woman. And then as I, came to find out more about her, that she was a Broadway diva from basically all of the 20s into the mid 1930s. And she did Mulatto with Langston Hughes. She was friends with County Cullen. She was up for, I think, an award at the same time as one of the Redgraves, I believe. And she was also in charge of 11 other Negro theater units around the country as part of the Federal Theater Project. And so, we talk about someone being a boss. I'm like, here's this Black woman who was a boss, and most people have never heard of her. So that was the draw for me.
yeah, well, I'm guilty of it too. I was
Okay, good. It's not just me. Good.
I had to ask my OG about Rose McClendon, Charles Woods. He was familiar with her,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, you bring back so much from the past. I mean, we know Orson Welles, most of us who study film, but we don't
Right.
don't necessarily know about his theater career. Um, but then this movie has 10 directors.
Yes. That's the beauty of it's the
How
beauty
does
of a
that
student
work? I
project.
can see having 10 directors on a series, but
Right, but
within
not
the
on
within the
one
context
movie.
of one show, seems like the camera person would have a lot more control over things.
Well, it's interesting. My understanding is, because I obviously wasn't involved in that process, but my
Mhm.
understanding is what they did was the cinematographer I thought was amazing. His name is Bosch. And each director met with him, had meetings with the producers, and, worked out what it was they were looking to explore in terms of their section, because what each director had was about a 10-minute section of the movie. So what they wanted to explore, but with the producers and the cinematographer, of course, you're right, to some extent, they were the ones who tried to keep an eye on the big picture and making sure it seemed cohesive and not like 10 different little small films.
Mhm.
And I think they actually did an amazing job of that.
Oh, I definitely agree. Yeah. I mean, but how is it? I mean, like, how
Working
do
with
you
10
prepare?
different directors.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
are they on the set when they're not working, when they're not in charge? Are they still there? Like, who do you look to? Like,
Most of them
you
were not. Most of them were only there when they were shooting. There were a few that came in a couple of times to sort of be, since it is part of one of their classes, there were a few that would come in sometimes for one of their friends to maybe be a second eye.
Mhm.
And I think we only had one, maybe two people who were directors who were there for the majority of the filming. Um, it was it was challenging, but it was empowering because one of the things they allowed us to do, and especially myself and Jewel, who plays Orson Welles, um, they knew that because we were throughout the entire film, we had this clear idea of the arc of our characters and the arc of the whole story. So, and you know how film is, you shoot out of order.
Mhm.
So, depending on who was coming in, they might say, "Okay, we're going to try and do this, and we want to do that, and you need to be like that, and this is where you are emotionally." And we would have to step in and say, "That's a great idea. However, the scene that came before this was like this. So this is where I left off emotionally. So if we do this, it's not quite it's incongruous to what we were doing before. So what if we try it this way?" So it was one of those what I understand might be a rare chance to really collaborate in terms of the filmmaking,
Right.
because that way everybody's on the same page. And they were really open to doing that
Right.
throughout.
Well, it seems like a great. I mean, I went to film school, but we certainly didn't have those kind of opportunities to make a major Hollywood film
And
released by
this
Warner
is
Brothers.
not typical, as you well know, because you went to NYU and AFI, is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you've been
Yes.
studying. Thank you. Yes.
And yeah, and I this is a special program even at USC, because most of their programs you're doing a short film. And if you're doing a feature length, I feel like most of the time it might be your thesis film in grad
Mhm.
school. But this is a special program, and they were blessed to be able to actually get a grant from Warner Brothers. And we also got a number of things either very discounted or gratis from them. So we shot on their they have an outdoor period New York set. So we shot on that set. And then they have an authentic 1930s Art Deco theater in San Pedro, the Warner Grand. So for all the rehearsal scenes and the performance scenes, we were at the theater.
Mm, mm. So take us back in the time. I mean, like, well, better question. Not to spoil anything. Anybody on who can go to Wikipedia and see that Inger's character doesn't live that much longer
Mm,
after the premiere of Voodoo Macbeth, right? So, I
right.
mean, how do you internalize that in terms of your character? I mean, like, what is your process in terms of taking on a character? Do you channel it? Do you just how do you prepare for a role? And then knowing that this woman is
Dies.
sickly, well, dies. Yeah, I mean, not
um,
the on-screen
which is
death.
not in the film. It's not in
It's
the
not in the
film.
film.
So we're
There's not
not.
an on-screen death, but knowing that this is like her swan song, so to speak, her wish, her dream. Like, how do you internalize that into and bring it into life in your character?
Well, I am someone who I do like to do research. And for me, one of the challenges on this was that I was actually on tour when I auditioned for this. And then I think I finished the tour maybe 2 days before we started shooting. So I actually didn't have a lot of time to do the kind of research I would normally do. So I was sort of doing it as we were going along. Um, but more importantly, it's funny that you say channel, because it- I do feel like one of the things that I like to do, and this probably sounds very weird, actory, whatever, but is think about if this character were saying to me, Inger, you're the only person who can portray me right now. And this is what I need you to say to the world about who I am. So I try to sort of come at it from that perspective. What is it that this character needs me to say, and what is important about who this character is in the whole story of the film? So trying to come at it more not so much externally but internally, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And then um like you said, she's sick, she has pleurisy, which she knows, but she's trying to hide from the rest of the cast and from Orson. So also having to deal with that internal struggle of, this is something I really want to do, I really want to play Lady M, am I going to be able to do it? So you've got that obstacle, and dealing with this, and I'm sure in her mind, this young white boy who's directing this play in my world with my people, and does he actually know what he's doing and how to handle this?
Hmm.
So you've got all these things percolating and coming at her, and
All right.
so
No,
it
that's
made it
right.
it made it fun to play.
Well, that's why I appreciate it. Like, you stood up, like the, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who's going to watch Voodoo Macbeth when it comes out first in theaters October 21st. But
Please come.
but you are more than the voice of reason. You have so much agency in this role in terms of equity. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is clearly well, you said 2018, 2020s movie.
Yes, it's a little before all of the reckoning, as I like to call it.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I really appreciate just seeing a black character stand up for themselves. Non stereotypical
Mm,
portrayals of any of the characters. It had my head spinning for the first act or so. I was like, okay, are they going to show black people the way we are, or the way we were presented in film at the
mhm.
time as elevator operators and porters and so on and so forth. But everyone has such a grand share of dignity in the film that that I give credit. I'm not sure who's responsible for the portrayals or that, if it comes in the casting or if it comes on the
I
set.
I think I think it's a combination of I'm trying to remember how many of the writers. I believe of the 8 writers, I think at least 3 were black.
Mm,
It might be 4, and I'm just not remembering because it's at this point, it's been a while. Actually,
yeah.
it might be 4.
Okay.
Um, so I think that had a huge part to do with it. And I know in a recent interview, one of the black female writers was talking about some things I hadn't heard about before, and issues that she was trying to make sure that there was dignity, especially for because there are really only 2 black women who are, in the
Mhm.
film in any great capacity, and she was really trying to fight for the dignity of who they were and not the stereotypical portrayals of what they could be. And she prevailed.
Exactly, and it's a tight script. There's
Mhm.
not a lot of shoe leather exhibition in it. And there's conflict in every scene. It turns. It's a fun ride.
I'm
And it
glad you
look,
enjoyed it. Yeah.
I did enjoy it because I'm a big history buff. I'm a big film buff, and it's nice to see. I wanted Orson to have that voice. That's the only thing, but that's impossible. There's only one Orson Welles,
There's only one Orson Welles, and
So
it's funny because Jewel always says, when he was first asked to audition, he kept thinking, "I don't look or sound anything like Orson Welles," and then he said, "You know what? That's not my business. Let me just
exactly.
audition and do my job."
Exactly. There's certain, and for those who don't know anything about Orson Welles, it's not gonna matter a
Right,
bit, so
right.
we have to take liberty with that. So we're getting close to our time. What are you doing now currently? It looks like you're in a theater someplace.
I'm always in a theater someplace. I, um, I am about to be in rehearsals for a local production. I think it might be the West Coast premiere of Lifespan of a Fact, which was the play that was on, I think it was on Broadway just before the pandemic with Cherry Jones, Daniel Radcliffe, and Bobby Cannavale.
Okay.
So I'll be doing the Cherry Jones role, which is a little intimidating, um, because I love Cherry Jones. But I'm excited that it's a local theater that does a lot of really wonderful work and usually tries to do work with very diverse cast, even if the play isn't written that way. So I'm excited to be doing that. That's the next thing up. And there's always something you're shooting, something you're auditioning for.
So where can people find you? I want people to know about you, Inger. Like
Well, thank you.
social media.
Social media it's easy because it's always my name. It's just at Inger Tudor. You can find me on Twitter, IG. I'm on Facebook. It's Facebook/Inger Tudor. Um, You can also go to my website, ingertudor.com, which usually has a lot of the other things I'm doing. I do a lot of voiceover. I do audio description for the blind, which is describing the action between the dialogue. So if you ever turn that button on your remote, you might hear my voice.
Say Orson reaches for.
Yes, exactly. Orson reaches for the glass very steadily, that kind of thing.
I love it. Voodoo Macbeth, October 21st. You don't want to miss it.
I need to stop trying to force you to my will. I need to trust you.
All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little head.
It's way too subversive for true Americans.
Too subversive or too black.
Have you ever wanted something so badly? You do anything, and I mean anything, to make it happen.